Dzień dobry. Этот уже сохранился. Ну, чистится.
And we just started excavating him, and we can already see an identification tag. Can you try to clean it? See if it's still in good condition? Oh yeah, it's like almost brand new. His number is still there, the blood group is still there, the unit is still there, so it should work out. I mentioned before that there was a string around this soldier's neck that you can see here. And sure enough, it does lead us to an identification tag that seems to be in extremely good condition. An aluminum tag. We'll try to pull it out. There. Yeah, it's almost brand new. This one had a fractured skull. It was hard to see if it was done by our machine or if it was an old fracture, but parts of them seem to be old, and right beside the skull there was this fragment of shrapnel, so that might be a cause of death. You can also see that the right humerus is severely fractured, and he has his identification tag, which is perfectly readable, from a pioneer battalion.
When I speak with people about finding the bodies of World War II soldiers, they always ask about the dog tags and say, so can you, read the name on the dog tag and contact the family and all that. But what a lot of people don't realize is that, as you can see on this dog tag right here, World War II German dog tags do not have names on them usually. They have a bunch of numbers. So what I'm going to explain to you in this video is what is actually written on these German dog tags, what does it mean, how can it be decoded, and how can you find out who the soldier was from that, and what are all the problems that can occur because of the way the dog tags are designed. Before getting into German dog tags, let's take a look at an American dog tag from World War II, which has very obvious information on it: the soldier's name, unique serial number, the name of the soldier's next of kin, his hometown address. Let's take a look at an Italian dog tag. It has something similar: the soldier's name, the name of his parents, his hometown, the year he was born in. So that's the kind of thing you expect to find on a dog tag. And let's go back to the German dog tags now and see what they actually have on them. So what you have on top here is the soldier's blood group. And then underneath you have this, what is actually a unit name. See? It says 1st Company of Infantry Replacement Battalion 385. And then under that you have this large number, 6,000 and something. So what that actually means is that this soldier who had this tag did his basic training in this Infantry Replacement Battalion 385, and he was the 6,252nd guy to have done his training in that unit. That's how it worked, see? Soldiers would come to their training unit, and the training unit would have all these tags prepared in advance with consecutive numbers, and then one tag would be given to each soldier one after another. So in the training unit they would all have the same tag with consecutive numbers. And when they were finished training, then they would be transferred to an actual combat unit. And so then in combat units you would have guys with dog tags with all kinds of different inscriptions, okay? And what you realize is that when you find this, there's no way you can know who this belonged to, because all this information is coded. And there's only one institution that can decode this stuff. It's the Deutsche Dienststelle in Berlin. And you see, they have all these books made by all the various units, all the various companies. See, with the names of the units written on the books. And only they can look into the appropriate book and look in the list of names and see who whatever serial number of that unit corresponded to. And this causes several problems, because if you look at this, the first thing that can happen is that when a bunch of young soldiers come to a unit and are all given the same ID tag without their name on it, well then they can very easily mix up the ID tags. You know, one soldier can take another soldier's ID tag, for example, after they go swimming or something. Another problem is that if those code books they have in Berlin got lost, well then who's going to be able to decode this? Nobody. It becomes impossible. Another problem is that when we find these dog tags with bodies, they're often corroded, so some numbers might be erased. And on a tag like this, if a single number is erased, well, then it can become very problematic to know who it belonged to. And then the last thing is that usually identification tags, like the American one and Italian we looked at, they just have a guy's name. They have no military information. And that's good for the army. The army doesn't want people to know if one of their men is captured. They don't want the enemy to know if this guy is infantry or air force or artillery or tank or whatever. And these German tags, well, not only do they not have the soldier's name, but plus they give away valid military information. They're saying this guy is infantry, this guy is panzer, etc. So these tags have a lot of really severe problems, and they're not just theoretical problems like I'm going to show you right now. These are some exhumations that were done in southern France, my region, and here it says that 2 bodies were found with dog tags for an Armenian unit, as you can see here. See, it has number 95 for Armenian Battalion 198. And for both these tags, it says in German, there's no dog tag lists available for these dog tags, so the soldiers will be unknown. So these guys were wearing the dog tags but remained unknown because of this stupid ID tag system. And this is even neater. They exhumed a body in a village in southern France, and you see he had his ID tag with 1,400 and something from Battalion 368. And it says in German, the owner of this tag, Joseph B., born on 4th of February 1907, is still alive. So that's a bit of a surprise. The soldier buried here will therefore remain unknown. So obviously the live soldier and the killed soldier exchanged their ID tag at some point, and it's kind of funny, but then it's not really funny because this soldier who was killed, he remains unknown because of that, you know. Nobody knows what happened to him because of that little mistake that happened. This is another very neat example. So this is a grave for the German soldiers killed in southern France, and I like researching lots of them. And this one here, you see his name was Adolf Kniep. It's not very easy to see. Born in 1906 in a village called Reutlingen. And I looked him up, so I wrote a letter to his hometown of Reutlingen. And they said, oh yeah, you know, he was from our town, he was born on the date you say and everything, but he just died a few years ago, and he was 104 years old, and he was the oldest person in our region. So this is the Adolf Kniep, who's supposed to have died in southern France in August 1944, and still going pretty good at 104, you know, being pictured in his local newspaper. So I didn't manage to find out what happened in this case, but obviously it's another case of a mistake due to these ID tags. And here are some examples as well of more mistakes. See, this is a German ID tag, and on top the number here ends by 631. And then if you look in the bottom half, the number just has 63. The number 1 isn't there. So you can imagine if this tag had been used, you would have a really hard time figuring out what unit you're supposed to look for, since one number is missing and you have no idea which number is missing or that it's missing. So it just makes it impossible to decode. And to compare, this is a retranscription of a US dog tag, like a carbon copy from a soldier who was killed in southern France. And you see it says Baru as a name, and that's actually a mistake. The guy's name was Barto, so this O here should be a T. But it doesn't matter. Even though there's this mistake, there's still the guy's serial number, which is unique for the entire US Army. And even if you couldn't read the serial number, you could always go through an alphabetical list or something, and you could figure out who the guy was, you know? Unlike for the German tags. And let's go back to the other example I showed before, the Italian dog tags. I had showed you this tag before that says the guy's name was Gott Bruno. And guess what? That's a mistake. The guy's name was actually Bot with a B and not with a G. But just like for the American tag, it doesn't matter if they made a mistake, because it still has his hometown, it still has a serial number for his region. So if there's a mistake, it doesn't matter, because all the information that's written on the tag is complementary. So if one thing is missing, you can figure out what it is from the rest of the information. Now I'll bring you back to a mass grave I found in 2014 in my own hometown. There were 14 bodies buried in the grave, and this is what it looked like.
C'est la plaque de numéro combien?
Numéro 1.
On a des lettres. On a le B là.
Ouais, c'est normal, il y a 100 km. Hein?
Vous savez que
Normalement, l'eau elle est tout au milieu, donc bon bah. Ça fait une dernière place après. Ah, c'est bon.
C'est quoi ça?
Ça c'est les débris d'une plaque d'identité.
Apparemment, mais il est assez fin celui-là.
On arrivera effectivement au chiffre des classes.
With the sixth body in the grave, which is represented here, we found an identification tag. And the identification tag had the following inscriptions on it. See number 10,897 for the 1st Company of Grenadier Replacement Battalion number 46. So we sent this identification tag to Berlin. And we were pretty disappointed because when Berlin wrote back, they said this identification tag cannot be decoded, so the soldier will remain unknown. And this had me stumped for a few years until I started to understand how these dog tags work and what kind of problems there can be. And what I did was I made a database of all the Germans killed in the Nice area of southern France with their dog tag information. And I thought, okay, so Berlin tells me that this guy is from Grenadier Replacement Battalion number 46. So I thought, okay, I'll take my lists of all the Germans killed near Nice and see if this unit even at least exists. So I had my Excel table, you see, and I classified it so that all the 46s are together. And what do I see? I see there's a bunch of 46s, but it's not for a grenadier unit. It's all for a pioneer unit, which means engineer units. And then what else do I see? I see that there are a bunch of guys with dog tags that say that's for Grenadier Replacement Battalion, not 46, but 461. And see, and these guys all have personal serial numbers that are all very high in the 10,000 range, just like the one that we found in the mass grave. So what happened here is pretty obvious. It's on our dog tag we found in the mass grave. The number 1 could not be read anymore. I mean, it got erased by the rust. And so in Berlin, when they received it, they thought it said 46, when it actually said 461. So I said, please check your information again, except this time check with 461 instead of 46 as the unit number. And sure enough, they wrote back and they said, oh, well now, yeah, we find it corresponds to a 19-year-old guy. His name was Józef Kurzizowski. And yeah, he's missing in action in Villeneuve-Loubet, which is where the grave was found. So everything matched perfectly. So this is a fine example of how one single digit becoming erased caused the dog tag to almost become unusable. And so we were able to rebury Józef Kurzizowski under his proper name with all the other guys who had been found in that mass grave in southern France. And this is another neat example. This is a dog tag that was found with the body of a German soldier in Stalingrad in Russia. And it's the tag I used as an example, so we've already seen it several times, right? And this tag actually belonged to a guy who was a medic. And he had probably, as a medic, I mean, he would have seen wounded soldiers and killed soldiers and being involved in filling in the paperwork. And he probably realized that these dog tags are causing a lot of trouble. So when you just look at this tag, you can't see anything. But when you put it under sunlight or under direct light with a reflection, then you can see this appear, see? This guy, his name was Yeshtat. And he carved his name into his ID tag at 3 different places, because he had probably seen how problematic these tags were. So this is he carved it at the front of the tag, and if we look at the back of the tag, you can see it's also carved in 2 places. It's carved up here, upside down, and up here, down here, you can see it properly. And I'll show you one last picture where the tag is visible. Where the name is nicely visible. So this tag, like I said, was found with a body. And usually it takes the German War Graves Commission a couple of years or even more to decode these tags, because they receive lots of them, and it's a big deal to go through all these lists and go and get the books and decode them. And this guy had been smart, and he wrote his name on his tag, and his name is very rare. So I was able to look in the German phone book, and I found there were only 10 people who had this name, and I sent a letter to all 10 of them. And I said, are you from the family of a guy called Yestadt missing in Stalingrad, Russia? And one guy wrote back and he said, yeah, my dad was named Peter Yestadt, and he was reported missing in Stalingrad in 1943. And then we figured out he was the right person. This was his tag. So as you can imagine, the son was already very old. I'm not even sure if he's still alive today. And if we had to wait for the body to be officially identified, maybe the son would have died without finding out that his father's body had been found. And because his father had been smart and he had carved his name on his tag, that made identifying him extremely simple, extremely easy, extremely fast, which enabled his son to find out that his father had been found, which made me personally very happy, of course. So that's all I had to say about these German dog tags. And as usual, if you need any help with World War II research, you can just send me an email. I'm always happy to help at this address. Okay? Have a nice day.